Hello everyone and welcome to our second live podcast here from the Eastern Archery Fencing Centre. I started
We're doing archery here.
You're doing archery. I did fencing last week. Archery Centre here in Salt Lake, Utah. I'm Karen and this is Chris, and we're here with a couple of legends from the sport. The USA's 2000 Olympic silver medalist Vic Wunderle. Thank you and welcome for coming.
Thank you, Karen.
And the Australian that beat him in that final, Simon Fairweather. Hi Simon.
Hiya, how you going?
Thanks very much for joining us, and we're going to have a chance to talk about that Olympic final. We've got some great footage coming up later on, so please do try and get involved. Send us your questions, but before we get to that, we're going to have a little recap on what's been going on here in Salt Lake at the third stage of the Hyundai Archery World Cup. Chris?
Yeah, we've had a full week of competition here in Salt Lake City at the Eastern Archery Centre. Our finalists are set tomorrow for compound finals day. We've got Sarah Lopez going up against Linda Ochoa Anderson, Abhishek Verma going up against Stefan Hansen. And then for the recurve finals, it's Deepika Kumari into her first gold medal match for 5 years against Germany's Michelle Kroppen. And then the recurve men, which we're all about today with Simon and Vic on the panel, Maro Nespoli against Steve Weiler. Now, Simon, I know you've been here all week watching what's going on the field behind us. What's been your impression of this event?
Well, it looks like everybody's been having a pretty hard time with the wind. I guess you can't help but if you're in the middle of a desert with not a lot around you in terms of structures and stuff like that, the wind's going to come howling across. And so, at the side of the field here, we've got these little pine trees that are growing, and I guess it's going to be a good 10 years or maybe in the desert longer than that before they're up. And all you can do is wait, but before they're big enough. But that back fence with the brick fence there, when the wind comes over that, like it's been doing, you get that big eddying effect. So it's been really crucial for the archers to know exactly where they're aiming from shot to shot. I had a few discussions with some of them during the week, and they said it's been one of those events where you have to aim a different spot every shot almost, and if you're not paying attention and you aim in the wrong spot, that arrow's gone as far as the score goes. So it's not like one of those events where you just pick a spot and just keep shooting at it and maybe adjust occasionally. It's been very much a arrow by arrow decision making. So I can't think who it was, but someone said that they had two spots that they were aiming at, and it was one of those, and if you weren't paying attention, you got caught out. So I think it was pretty hard work for them.
Okay, and we were talking about something earlier, because I know you're quite good friends with some of the Dutch archers, and Steve yesterday made the finals. He upset Brady Ellison in the third or fourth round, I think, and he made it through. But we found out something interesting about Steve, didn't we?
Rumor is that he's hurt his hand fairly significantly, and I was talking to someone who said that he was sore from before yesterday, so he actually shot all of the matches yesterday with his hand, if it's true, with it injured. So it hasn't stopped him, so I guess unless it gets sore or stiffer in the next few days before Sunday, then he'll be okay. But he kept his game face pretty well, and despite it, and it didn't seem to upset his shooting. But
okay, and Vic, he's up against Maro Nespoli. What do you know of Steve and Maro, and what kind of match do you think that's going to be?
I think it'll be an exciting match. I mean, they're both great archers. They're both good shooters. They're both experienced, in a lot of these world competitions. I think it's going to be pretty exciting for everybody watching at home.
Okay, you guys haven't been shooting at World Cups recently, but time's moved on with equipment. But the one thing that hasn't changed is the wind. Are they still dealing with the wind in the same way that you guys did? Or
well, I think they deal with it better than I ever dealt with it. I always struggled in the wind, I think, and Sydney was probably the only exception where I actually got it together. And that ranking round, remember that? It was horrendous out there. The finals field wasn't so bad in Sydney, I didn't think, because of maybe the grandstands around it. It was a bit tricky, but it wasn't like the ranking round where I think I was aiming in the 4 the whole week.
The last thing Lloyd Brown said to me before I walked up to the shooting line for that is he let me know I was the only one on our team that had not missed the bail once in practice that week. Like, this is supposed to be encouragement?
It's interesting you say that though with the wind conditions here, because there's a change in the setup for the finals range where it's shielded at the shooting line, and then it opens up, which is completely different to here. How's that going to affect the
That's
guys?
right, there's shooting lines tucked around behind the side of the building. So, well, I mean, I guess the advantage of that is that it's not going to be, if they are sheltered there, the wind won't be moving the bow as much, so they'll actually be able to aim precisely, but they'll have to be looking at all of the flags you can see at the end of the fence there, and try and work out what it's going to do to the arrows downrange. So I don't know whether they're behind the building enough so that the majority of the arrow's flight is protected and it's just the last bit. Because if it is just the last bit, you'd imagine you might drift a ring or two perhaps if it's only the last part of the flight that it's.
It's supposed to be consistent as well.
That's
isn't it?
right.
It's going to
Yeah.
be a real monster.
You can imagine, if it's switching back and forwards and they're not feeling it from where they're standing and they're not seeing it perhaps with the flags, then if it's left wind for one shot and it drifts you a ring or two one way, and then you adjust for that in your aiming, and then it switched the other way, you've doubled. You've got two mistakes, and then you're way over the other side. So that could be tricky, but you never really know whether it's going to be a tricky situation or whether it actually minimises the problem and they can forget about it and just get on with shooting. So.
And in the team events themselves, where the archers are all talking to each other and providing that feedback, you're talking about eddies here. I mean, if it is swirling around, how valuable is that communication?
As long as it's the same between the different shots, so you get one archer gets up there and it does one thing and they come back and report that to their team, and then if it's changed in the meantime, then it's all for nothing. So I guess you can at least have your teammates watching the flags as you're up there, and so if they're good at picking it and observant, it can help. You've got more information coming in.
We were talking about you shooting in the wind just before we went live, weren't we? And you said sometimes you're aiming and it's just off and you just don't quite get in the rhythm and the breaks don't come. In an individual match, there's not many arrows to get it right, is there? What's going through your mind when that kind of thing's going on?
Yeah, and the matches are pretty short and sweet, so it really helps to be on from the first arrow. And if not, you better make that good first arrow a good shot so you can figure it out and know what to do on the second arrow to make that correction very fast. Sometimes we were talking earlier, and I know it's probably going to come before it's over, but like my match with Simon in the Olympics, he was more familiar with the area and he had the wind figured out a little better than I did on everything, and the wind was slowly dying through the day and changed a little bit between my last match, and he was on it and I was a little off. But sometimes you get it where you're just hitting one side or the other and you don't quite have it, and sometimes it can be blowing like crazy and you got that spot nailed and they just all go in the 10 ring. It's kind of sometimes it's a fine line at this level because all of these archers are good enough to win.
I'm mostly excited for the slow motion camera from behind and seeing that arrow. If it is windy and the arrow flipping out and kicking at halfway, that's going to be cool.
Yeah, some of the shots are incredible we've seen this season, and I think here's going to be much the same, isn't it? And it'd be interesting with the setup for the finals range is very different to what we saw in Shanghai and what we saw in Antalya.
Absolutely. Right.
Well, there's a roundup for you guys, and thanks for your input. But we're all about a little bit of fun here, so we've got a little bit of a speed challenge coming up. And Chris, you've done this a couple of times before. Would you like to explain to our viewers and our lovely guests what this is all about?
So I watch breakfast television in the UK, and there's this wonderful thing they do on Saturday morning breakfast or Sunday morning breakfast, the 3-egg omelette challenge, where they get two chefs to cook a 3-egg omelette in the quickest possible time.
And that's what we've got for you today.
So I was trying to find how we could do that with archery, and this is the thing I've come up with so far, the speed fletching challenge. So I'm going to give both of you an arrow, and I'm going to give you some fletchings and some fletching tape, and we're going to ask you to fletch an arrow as quickly. That's my
Laptop gone.
That's my laptop. I wanted a new one anyway, so it's.
Get our insurance.
That's what you were planning.
There you go, the wind swirling around. That's what you get.
You didn't pick it.
Make sure you aim off a little bit when you apply the tape.
I think I'm gonna leave that off.
I am really kicking myself right now because right before I left, the last thing I took out of my bow case was my spin wing tape, the nice long spin wing tape that I'm used to using all the time, that I'm so fast with, and I can see you have some veins and tape here that I've never used before, so this will be fun.
Excuses coming out already.
I'm sorry, I use the Spin Wing brand.
But you're on home soil, so you've got the crowd behind you here. So really, Simon's the one that's struggling a little bit.
That is true. That is true.
Sorry, I've
oiled them.
washed everything.
They won't stick properly.
So you have to share that. That's top and tailing tape, and that's the sticky
This is
tape.
gonna be fun.
I've got some rules for you.
Good luck. It's gonna take you longer.
I got some rules for you before we kick off. And do you want to get the stopwatch up on your?
I need a stopwatch.
Are the rules like it has to be good enough to shoot when you're done, or well, I mean, my bow's tuned. I can shoot bear shafts.
With that bear shaft, if you can shoot that and hit anywhere near the target, I'll buy you a lemonade later. So, the rules of the Fletching Challenge. It is both a head-to-head and a time trial contest. 1 arrow from bear shaft to acceptably fletched, okay?
Acceptably fletched.
Acceptably fletched. Oh, glasses on. This
This
is getting serious.
I've got 4 Fletchers, I can see them now.
So
Excellent. That gives me an advantage.
Am I going to judge the
I only
fletching?
put 2 on
No,
mine.
I'm the judge of fletching. You're timing Vic.
Okie dokie.
I'm going
What?
to time Simon.
I'm what?
I'm timing you. So you give me the thumbs up when you're finished.
Oh, okay. All right.
I want a hurrah of victory for
So we're doing this one at a time or
no,
simultaneously?
we're gonna do simultaneously.
Can
Okay,
we just
so
have a look at that?
should we, like, tear this in
that
two or
leaderboard,
something?
The
Yeah,
World
something like that.
Archery Speed Fletching leaderboard. What's the time the guys have
So
to
the time-
try and beat here?
The time to beat is 1 minute 33, set by Gabriella Bayardo.
Either one. Take your pick.
Okay.
I think the time you can't not beat is the highest compound, Linda Ochoa, at 1:39. How quickly do you think you're gonna do it, Vic?
This stuff, I have no idea.
This stuff's
The spin wing tape that I use at home and the stuff there, I'm sure I could do it under a minute. But this stuff, might take me through 5 minutes for all I know. We'll see.
So Simon was telling me beforehand he's going to do it in 10 seconds. So,
But he's good. He's professional. I'm only semi-pro.
okay, are we ready?
You want me to kick things off then?
You want to count it down?
So I'll give you a 3, 2, 1, guys. Good luck.
Thank you.
3, 2, 1. Start fletching.
So both going for the on the arrow technique, but Simon's gone crazy here. Does it work?
I don't know.
So Simon's wrapping the fletching tape all the way around the shaft rather than in line with the fletching.
Hey, they're popping off.
And there's the wind
did oil
playing
these, didn't
a
you?
part here in the speed fletching as well as it will do tomorrow.
Vic's just about finished. I can see it out of the corner of my eye.
Just off into. Oh, there's a delay.
Vic's going at 100 miles an hour here.
Come off tape.
Great Vic's done.
This stuff's not even coming off. Did you just glue these back on, Vic?
I left all the tape on from last time.
I'm claiming equipment failure here.
You claimed that in the escape room last.
Does this stuff
other
even
night,
come
so-
off? What is it?
Yeah, it was sticky.
You don't want the fletchings to come off, do you? When you're shooting.
There it goes.
One minute 30 and counting.
Simon's into quality control. He-
Wow, you say that, but I'm looking at these.
Hey, actually, I'm pretty impressed with
All
that.
right,
for
Right,
the,
stop. So, do you want to check each other's arrows?
This could be interesting.
Oh yeah,
So Simon's done something a bit weird.
I'd shoot that in a competition.
Oh, yeah? Yeah, that's pretty good. Pretty good.
I feel better about mine now.
Slow and
Pretty
steady.
good.
wins the-
It's better than most of mine fletched that I shot in my tournament last week.
Oh,
I see
yeah.
we've both got a vein that's kind of straight. That might.
Well, you're picky, aren't you?
Yeah.
This has got some angle on one of these. So, Simon, what did you do with yours? You did it differently.
I'd been sitting there talking to Jay Bars the other day, and then we talked about this, and he said, "You know what? I'd just get a great big piece of double-sided tape and just stick it right around the arrow, and just stick them on." And he said, "Or just spiral them down, like wrap the tape around." And then I was a bit dismayed when you showed me this funny blue tape that is not very long. I was expecting to just run one long big spin wing tape around it, but then they were popping off this stuff a bit.
What do they say about
I get
bad
this-
workman?
Yeah. I always blame tools. and the other thing I always have trouble with is, as I've got older, my fingertips seem to be dry.
Okay.
And I can't pick stuff up. I sit there and curse at it, trying to pick stuff off tables and things. My phone never opens. I press
With
the
your-
fingerprint thing, sitting there, and I start swearing away at it because it's like note. You've got to use the passcode all the time.
But you do a lot of manufacturing in your house. So
Yeah,
you
that's
probably
right.
burn
And using
the fingertips.
solvents and things like that. Yeah, and so my fingertips are always, or sandpaper. So I do a lot of home renovations at the moment, and the sandpaper stuff that I'm using always seems to make my fingertips really sort of dry. Which
Usually
is
you're supposed
really
to get your
tricky.
excuses in
Before,
before
yeah.
you start rather than after.
Yeah.
All right, Vic, how quickly do you think you did it?
I don't know, minute.
Ooh, very
not very
close.
quick.
101. 101. That is a brilliant time.
Current victor of the Speed Fletching Challenge is Vic, and how quickly do you think you did it,
Can
Simon?
you say something about 1:30 had gone past? So we're looking at
was
1:40
yesterday.
or something. Or?
Do we think quicker or slower than Chef?
Yeah, I reckon maybe a bit slower than Chef. Maybe.
You're right.
Yeah.
1 minute
Only just though.
43.
There we go.
So do you put Brady down as a recurve or a compound guy on this leaderboard?
We don't discriminate.
Oh, okay.
We don't discriminate. One leaderboard for all.
Okay.
Yeah. I was going to do a D-loop challenge, but knowing how few compound archers do their own D-loops and how many leave it to their coaches, I thought that could be that could take all day. So big round of applause for Vic, the new leader in our Fletching Challenge, everybody.
Impressive time as well.
Yeah.
Impressive time as well. So thanks, guys. That's a little bit of fun, but we want to have a look at how you fared back in 2000 at the Olympic Games in Sydney. Well, pretty amazing stuff there from back in 2000, and a really incredible venue as well in Sydney. The Games itself was wonderful. Your experiences first, let's start with you, Vic.
Oh, it was a wonderful, exciting experience. First Olympics, and to be able to represent your country in the biggest sporting event in the world. It's it's exciting. It's incredible, and to come home with not one but 2 medals from the event. That was it was fabulous. It was an experience that I'll take with me the rest of my life.
And Simon, an Aussie on home soil.
Yeah. It was funny too. It felt really different than a lot of Olympics, in the sense that because it was Southern Hemisphere, and in order to get the games, I think the organising committee had to adjust what time of year they were willing to put it. So it wasn't the height of summer like they usually are. Olympics are normally hot as hell, and it wasn't. It was cool.
There was
this
one
sort of
morning
weather,
we came out, there was frost on the ground in practice one
I
morning.
believe it. Yeah. So it was funny. It wasn't one of those ones where you spent the whole time in sweaty shorts. It was raincoats and making sure you kept warm most of the time, and windy. It was a windy venue. It's not the first Olympic venue that's been everybody's been worried about the wind. And there was a day I remember that the venue was closed down. We couldn't practice because the wind was over 70 kilometres per hour, gusting over. So it did get windy, but for me it was my fourth games, and I really enjoyed it. Obviously, winners are grinners, but I enjoyed how it felt. It in terms of it just was different, but also a familiar place in Australia. Everybody seemed to be in a really good mood too. All the volunteers and so on. I guess when it's your own country, you're more aware of that. It was easy for me to keep a positive attitude there. And I think that's really crucial, isn't it? You've got to have a positive attitude
And
for the event
I got
to
the
work
same,
out well.
I got the same feeling from all the volunteers and all the workers, and it was a very comfortable, venue and facility, and everybody was very welcoming. It was.
Yeah, I think it was the only time the Sydney trains are run on time.
And the venue was an hour or so outside of the CBD, wasn't it?
Depending on the it's probably taking an hour to get there now. Well, I think actually Homebush is very similar, very close to the city centre, so it wasn't too long. And with the trains all running well, it was actually pretty easy to get around. So, good venue, I think. And it's a funny thing though, those venues, when you see them years after, they don't look anything like it. The same. With all of the tents and infrastructure and stuff that goes up for an event, you could be anywhere. And once all that stuff's gone, you get left with just the bones of the venue, and it looks really weird.
we were talking the other day about the last arrows of that match, and and I think I asked you how much do you remember, and you kind of said, oh, not that much, and then you took me through almost arrow. Second by second that last arrow.
Yeah. So that was a funny finish to the thing. You know, I sort of said, you know, you got to keep a positive mental attitude, and I remember Keith Sick, our coach, he sort of begged us almost at the beginning of the week to. He'd been working with us for a couple of years and changing a lot of things that we had been doing, because a lot of us had been shooting for a long time when we started working with him. So, you know, it was a lot of rebuilding and trying to change how we were doing things and different attitudes about stuff. And, you know, to a greater or lesser extent, we sort of picked up on a lot of that stuff, but we struggled, I think, to keep all of it in the air at once, you know, juggle all the balls and keep them in the air at once. And he said, you know, if ever you're going to do it, you know, like this week, can you know, do this, and this? And one of the things was keep a positive mental attitude. And you know, I think for once I really took that to heart and managed to do it. Like I said, you know, everything was set up well for the games from our perspective, and it was easier to keep a positive attitude. And I was able to keep a positive attitude for each shot and so on. And that last arrow, I just had that funny that half thought in your mind about what if something terrible happened to this shot. You know, like, you know, if you've ever been one of those archers that's pulled an arrow off the rest or something, and it's, you know, it's missed the butt altogether or something like that. You know, that little sort of, it's not even really a spoken thing in your mind, but that sort of realization of, what if this is one of those shots where something terrible happens? You know, I think I needed a 4 or something on the last arrow, and it's like, what if I missed it altogether in front of all these people? Yeah, you wouldn't have been upset at all, would you? And I thought, and I realised, and we had 40 seconds a shot too then, not like the 20 now, and I knew that I had time to shoot another or try another shot, and I thought, I'm not shooting this arrow as it is. Once that thought's gone through your head, I don't want to start or finish the shot with that going on, rattling around the back of my mind. I thought, start it again. And then I realised that it didn't have to be a 10, it just had to be not a stuff up. So I just thought, just get it away. Don't think any more about it, but don't think about any of that rubbish that you were just thinking. Just, you know, screensaver going on inside my head, shoot the arrow, get it out of the bow, and don't mess it up. But and that's what. So the wind had probably changed fractionally, and I didn't attenuate to it. So that was the only shot I think that was outside of the gold. But 8, you know, so it was enough. But it could have been a disaster, you know, with just the wrong thinking and make a mistake. And what a venue to have made a mistake like that. You know, go down in history as the guy who missed his last arrow on, you know. Yeah.
It's amazing the mind games that this sport plays. And I've got a question for you about, you know, your lead into that final and how you prepared mentally, given the fact you had a couple of tight matches going into the gold medal match.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'd done all my preparations prior to going and was, you know, very physically and mentally prepared for everything. You know, there was the risk of giving stuff away, but people probably figure things out now anyhow. But I remember Butch had told me in the '96 Olympics that he got up there and then all of a sudden this rabbit cam starts zipping back and forth in front of him, you know, taking the pictures. You know, so I would practice every day with kids rolling balls back and forth in front of me. I'd hang a sheet in the tree or on the line and let it blow in the wind to, you know, be like crowd distraction stuff, playing tapes of the '96 Olympics while I was shooting. So, you know, as far as all the crowd and all the outside stuff, that didn't matter to me. I was just shooting at home. But yeah, you mentioned, you know, I had some exciting matches prior to that. You know, the 2 matches before, I beat the Korean Oh Kyu-moon, who was shooting exceptionally well. You know, and mentally that was a tough match. I had to stay very focused on, and then the semifinal, getting in to Simon, I was it came down with me and Magnus Peterson. The match was really, really close the whole way, and then I think the last arrow I had to have I think we were tied with 1 arrow to go, maybe had to have a 10 to win, 9 to tie, and I remember aiming left in the 7 ring and you know, thinking, well, you know, I can shoot my average shot and this will hit the yellow and I'll finish it off, or I'll, you know, go to a tiebreaker or something, or I can really bear down and try to make sure this is a 10 and not have to deal with going into a shoot off on everything. And I got the 10 that I was hoping for, moved on to the next match. So I know a lot of people talk about, I've heard some people say something about losing the gold and that, but in my eyes, or getting the silver, because I lost that in my eyes when I won that semifinal match, that guaranteed me the silver. So that was the moment that I had essentially, won the silver medal. To win the gold, you have to win one more match. And Simon was shooting better than me that match.
I had the same thought, I'd had disasters every Olympics I'd been to before that, the best one I had before that was the first one I went to, where I was 16th, and then it was all downhill from there for another 8 years. And after the semi-finals, it's like, well, I've got a medal, Yeah. I had that moment where I thought, I've got this far, I've got a medal, I could just go, okay, that's good enough. This is way better than I expected or hoped for. And I thought, if I mess it up now, if I don't keep attenuating to what I've been doing up to this point, it'll be a silver medal. And it was just like 15 minutes more of keeping my head down, but I had that moment where I thought, it's a medal. It's almost more relaxing as you go through the matches. People say it's getting more pressure, but I always find that first match is the killer. Terrified that if you lose that, you're going to be at the bottom of the event. I
think for me in Sydney, that the first match I was a little nervous on, and after that I was all right after that. And even through the finals, people say or think whatever from sitting on their couch, but I really didn't feel nervous, and I was pretty confident in what I was doing. And it wasn't until we got down to about the last 3 arrows and I started doing the math in my head that I'm like, there's a chance I might not actually win this thing. But I was confident. I was confident enough in what I was doing, typically, that I'm like, yeah, I'm just going to go shoot the way I do at home, and that that works. But yeah, I would agree with you. I would agree with you on that.
It gets easier. Yeah. I think, for people like like Chef and the guys who are frequently winning these days, I'm sure it must be much easier for them than people who only occasionally make a presence on the second half of the event.
Well, of course, with the World Cup, they have a lot more matches as well.
Yeah, you're getting used to
have
it.
that.
And winning allows you to do it more often, and you get better and better. Whereas if you don't get many chances at it, and also back then we didn't have really the World Cup circuit, so you had a few events you could go to, but that was it. And
so you couldn't rehearse that part.
Not as much.
Going through the process of being on the podium.
I think they get a lot more practice now doing it, and then they get a lot more at home at being at that level.
It's a fascinating insight, but we're being a bit selfish. We've got some viewer questions.
No, we're going to do that at the end. I've got more questions.
Go on, go for it.
Don't worry about this. I've got all the questions. Because I want to know about the '96 Olympics, because you mentioned that a second, and Justin obviously won that, and you're friends with Butch, and you got some information from him. Coming into 2000, how much pressure did you feel to kind of repeat what Justin had achieved in Atlanta and the success of the recurve men's team from the US 4 years before?
I don't really know that there was a lot of, I don't know that I actually felt or put the pressure on myself. I know there was, certain expectation that the American team always seems to do well at these events, and I'd shot with many of these people, many of the great American archers since I was young, and at one point or other I'd beaten almost all of them, and I knew my good days were plenty good enough, but I also know that, we could have put up that same panel of people and shot one of those elimination rounds 10 times, and we might have 6 different winners before it's over with. And Simon might win it 3 times in a row, or I might win it. We might end up in 35th place.
Yeah, I could have lost the first match next time around.
It's but I think it probably gave me a little more confidence, having being able to hear and share some of the experiences from our successful archers that came before me, and to have that guidance and that confidence. I think certainly doesn't hurt, but you do have a weight of a nation resting their hopes on you. So
no small thing on your shoulders there.
Some of it's what you put on yourself. I remember a good friend of mine that was shooting very well at the time. He walked in the Olympic Stadium and failed on his first match, and he came back. He said, I walked in and I looked at the, I was fine. I looked up and I saw my country flag, and I thought, me from the little old country of such and such, and he said I started shaking so bad I almost fell down. So the Olympics is different than any other competition that we shoot. The pressure level is it's elevated over over any of the other competitions we shoot for sure.
And Simon, you will forever be known as the Sydney Olympic champion. That's never going to change, because that's the one you won. But like you said, you did a few before and after.
Yeah.
Five Olympics is no mean feat.
Yeah, it's funny. Like after Sydney, you think, I've learnt my lessons on how to succeed and so on. And then Athens, I lost my first match again. So probably not as big a mistakes as I'd made in the past, and it could have gone either way. But we don't always learn our lessons.
You've obviously kept in touch with the sport ever since. You've seen some of the Olympics that in Rio and in London. You shot in Beijing, so you shot one later. How have you seen the sport evolve over that time? What do you think? Obviously, with the set system, it's completely different in terms of competition. And you shot in Olympics that didn't even have match play as well.
Yeah.
Right?
No,
that was the first.
First one, it was grand feeders when Jay won.
Yeah.
And then after that, so 88, Jay won that with the grand feeders, and then the World Championships after that, I won with the grand feeder, and then Barcelona came along with matches, and it took a long time for a lot of us who'd got used to the previous format to make the transition. I think that's a really tough call for people to make transitions of the whole nature of the event. When you grow up and the format is what you enter the sport with, it's a lot of young guys don't feel nerves, and I remember when I was young, shooting my first nationals and stuff, I probably didn't feel as much nerves as I felt later. You've got more to lose. But I think now that the set systems come in, I sort of feel like the archers tend to be more aggressive with their shots. It's not trying to maintain a nice steady form and sort of a momentum and average score. It's like this arrow.
Yeah.
It's a bit like imagine doing the Robin Hood thing where you've got to split the arrow to win the event kind of thing. It's come down to sort of one arrow a few times, whereas before it was a combination of a score, like a number of arrows. Now it's much more stepping up and putting this one in when it counts. And you can mess one up and then come back, like as people say, you can have a set where you miss the target altogether. You've lost that set, but it doesn't affect the next one. So now it's back to being aggressive. So almost like turning your back on your last shots and winning it with this one, rather than, I shot a bad arrow 5 arrows ago and I can't come back from it, and that sort of has a different feel about it, I think.
And do you think the same people are winning now, Vic, or do you think it's a different skill set that's winning international events?
Well, I think no matter what the format, your better archers are going to tend to elevate towards the top. I mean, some of the format now certainly leaves more to chance than, say, back in the early days of the double FIDA, where they'd shoot 288 arrows and the best archer would win. There's more chance involved, but that makes it more fun for our spectators as well, and it makes it more exciting. So there's kind of some give and take there, I guess.
Yeah, you can argue about which is real archery. I mean, is the 288 arrows real archery, or is it putting the one arrow in there when it counts real archery? I mean, I guess as a competitor, it's a moot point. You don't get to change the rules. You just have to adapt to what the new requirements are and get on with it, I guess.
Yeah. And even if we were to, I mean, you can look at the ranking round and the finals. I mean, people who fare well in the ranking round, they don't always make the finals, but they tend to progress further through the matches than otherwise. So, your better archers will tend to work their way closer to the top on average. But, like we said, you can host one of these events several times and have several different winners.
So we've digressed a bit, but Simon, you won the Olympic final in 2000 against Vic. Vic's bought his bow. Are you good to go for a rerun, or?
I choose not to compete. That's what Jerry Seinfeld used to say.
Yeah, it's brilliant.
We were saying, we don't get up early anymore. Dick said this is too early. I think this is the first morning I got out of bed before about 8:15 this week. So
the life of a retired
I kind of like it.
What have you been doing since? You shoot a bit now, right?
I haven't shot since. I haven't really shot since
Dublin?
Dublin, yeah. We shot Vegas this year just for fun, and I shot a really light bow just so I could pull it back, and it was more about shooting with friends than looking for scores or anything. I was very middle pack in Vegas. I was head coach for a few years after I stopped shooting, and then really I walked away from it pretty much. I've been recently I've sort of got back involved because I've been making a finger tab, and sort of been hovering around the world circuit just to promote that and talk to archers and so on. And it's been nice, to be involved on a different level. Not being out there as a shooter, and not necessarily being out there as a coach where you've got the pressure of your athletes performing. It's a similar kind of thing. Come in as from more of a sort of a peripheral industry, and get to enjoy it as a interested party without being all that concerned about the result. Has been really nice, and catch up with friends, and a lot of good people in the sport, and it's nice to be able to interact with them without having to compete against them.
Well, we're glad to have you back, so thank you for coming along today. Vic, what about you? You're still shooting competitively. You were in Yankton at the start of the year.
Yeah, I shot the Indoor Worlds earlier this year. I really wanted to go to the World Field again, but after kind of contemplating the financial part of spending the money towards it, I decided to save it and use that money at home. But that's still, I'm doing more coaching now, so I'm doing some private lessons and things like that, doing a little bit of coaching here and there, and so kind of enjoying some coaching and enjoying some shooting.
Sounds good. Sounds like the right side of archery life. Yeah. Shall we move on?
We shall indeed. Thanks very much, guys. A great insight. But now we've got a little bit of a quiz.
We have got a bit of a quiz. You're going to ask the questions, Graham?
What are we going to do? We're going to alternate questions?
No, you're going to ask the questions, and I'm going to say whether it's correct or not.
Alternate between the guys?
No.
One question each, or we go down, do Simon first and then Vic?
Well, they can choose who goes first, because we're going to have a 60-second clock come up on the old...
Oh, here we go.
Who's first?
I don't know. They used
Well,
to do a
you
coin.
choose.
They used to do a coin toss.
You won the Fletching challenge. You choose.
There you go.
I'll let Simon go first. We'll see what we're up
okay.
against.
Excellent. Right, so you're on the left. Have we got the clock? So I'm going to count down. If we start a question and the buzzer goes, we'll finish the question.
I'll start it till I finish.
Yeah, you start
One
it
of
till you'll
those.
finish.
One of those.
You'll ask, I'll say yes or no, and then you'll ask the next question.
Got you.
Simple? As many as you can, 60 seconds.
I think this could be a trick quiz.
Are they true or false, or are they?
There's all kind of things in there,
okay.
actually, but they're quite similar quizzes, so yeah. I don't know. I did it this morning, and I had a late night, so we'll see how it goes. We'll see how it goes.
You said I have to put my excuses forward before. Well, don't they count?
Ready?
Ready when you are.
I'm going to count you down.
Go for it.
3, 2, 1, go.
Where and when did you win the World
Hang on,
Championships?
We've had a timing mull.
1991?
No.
Oh wait, that was.
I'm going to have to move straight on to that.
You better not say it when you.
question.
He'll knows it. We'll do that one again. I don't want to run out of questions.
I want ones that I can answer too.
How are we doing, technical guys?
I was all geared up then. I don't know about you.
So
I don't have to
excited.
answer the questions.
My hands have gone sweaty now.
Got the sweats, yeah.
We're back.
Oh, here we go.
Are we ready? Okay, 3, 2, 1, try again.
Well, this would be a surprise. Where and when did you win the World Championships?
So it was 1991 in Krakow, Poland.
Correct.
Who is the current recurve men's world number 1?
I don't know.
Kim Woo Jin.
Ooh, how
of
many
course,
Olympics did Vic compete in?
3?
Correct.
How old were you at your first Olympics?
18.
Correct.
How many points did you shoot in the 2000 Olympic final?
112? 113. 113.
Oh, half a point.
Ooh.
Half a point.
What did you score in qualification in Sydney?
I don't know. I came 8th. I don't know what the
Half a
score
point.
was.
642.
Name one of the mascots of the Sydney 2000 Olympics.
No, Ollie.
Ollie,
Oh, very
well
good,
done.
very
Ollie the
good.
Kookaburra. That's awesome.
What's the highest score available with a single arrow in field archery?
6.
Yes.
Who won women's gold when you won the Olympics?
Oh, I've drunk too much beer.
Oh, time's
Oh,
up.
that was lucky.
You don't want to give an answer?
I forget. I forget her name.
Yeah, I
Well,
can see.
I get confused with the
I can see
Koreans.
her. I can see her.
Yeah, but the names I just...
Dadgummit. It'll come to me a little bit. I know which one it is. I could see her.
Do you know who seeded first?
Who was seeded first?
Yeah,
in ours?
in the women's. That's an easier. Well, that's a more memorable.
Was Park first?
No, it was Kim Soon Young.
Or Kim Soon Young was first.
And then
She seeded first, did she?
she seeded first. Yeah, after having the baby.
Yeah.
And then Kim Mi-jun won.
Yeah, that's.
Yeah, yeah.
So you got, how many points are we going to give you? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.5, 6. 6 points.
6 points.
Not bad. Not bad.
So 6
How are you
points
gonna
the
do
challenge,
that? You
Vic.
do more or less.
I don't know. This is hard. This is harder than going to university. I can see now.
How much beer have you drunk?
Despite what the viewers may think, it's water in the bottom of this cup. It's just.
Oh, you got the bad one. I got gin.
I've got nothing in mind.
I do you want some water?
No, I've got
We can
some,
fix
yeah,
that.
yeah.
Do you want to start? You ready?
Is this
Ready when you are.
timed or anything, or just got a?
Time
60 seconds.
Oh, okay.
you
Oh, so
ready?
it's as many as you get in 60 seconds?
As many as you get in 60 seconds.
Weren't you paying attention?
I told you, I usually don't wake up till noon.
3, 2, 1, go for it.
Where and when did you win the Pan American Games?
I medaled in a whole bunch of them. If we're talking individual, I think 2007 in Argentina, Brazil,
Didn't you win in Santo Domingo
Santo Domingo. That was
in
it.
2003?
Let's move on.
I won team medals in all of them, I think.
Who's the current recurve men's world champion?
Is it M-Dong?
Yes, correct.
How many Olympics did Simon compete in?
5. We
Yes.
talked about that earlier.
How old were you at your first Olympics?
24.
Correct.
How many points did you shoot in the 2000 Olympic final?
106.
Yeah.
What did you score in qualifying?
643?
Yes.
I knew it was like a point above you when you said 643.
Name one of the other mascots at the 2000 Olympics.
I got nothing. Pass.
You could have had Sid the Platypus or Millie the Echidna.
Time's up.
Okay. So you answered a few less questions. 5.
The mascots, I never pay attention to that.
I can't believe you got one right. I'm super impressed.
If only I would have known when I won a big tournament, I would have gone faster in the beginning of
That's
this.
what you get for winning too many things. That's it. It's easy
I
when
think
the
if you
list
look
is really
back-
short.
I think if you look back, like I think I can't remember how many of those I competed in. I can count up, but I have gold medals from all of them. But the Pan Ams are great. You get medals for like 90 meters, 70 meters, 50 meters, 30 meters, individual, team, and then they kind of cut it down to just individual and team towards the end of it. But
Where do you put them all?
shoe boxes.
You can't admit that. But you say on the wall nicely in a good display. That's the.
I intend to do that someday.
We all do. We never do it. Yes, the framing cost a lot of money. I'm not doing it this week. Yeah.
Vic, you got 5 correct, so 1 less, I'm afraid. So still
So
less-
what's the tiebreaker? We're just right?
Where's your Olympic medals out of interest? Where are your Olympic medals? Yeah. Where do you keep them?
Locked in a gun safe.
Locked in a gun safe.
Yeah. I finally got a gun safe for it. It's been in sock drawers and stuff for years and years, and finally now it's actually locked up. It'll probably get pinched now.
No, it's safe.
Finally now it's safe. It'll probably disappear or something.
Yeah, that's why I'm not going to answer that
Yeah,
question
that's
on air. But mine,
I didn't say where the gun safe was. but-
Yeah.
So you won't answer that question.
I don't want somebody coming and robbing the place, but mine's probably not as secure as his.
Well, that was the thing though. Like I didn't used to say. Well, occasionally you would. People would say, "So where is he?" You say, "Oh, in a sock drawer or something." It's like, "Oh."
It's kind of funny because, like, of the hundreds of medals that we win and that, I never thought, you never think about somebody actually possibly stealing one until you get that Olympic one.
Yeah, that's right. And then you hear about it actually happening to some people, and you think, really,
Yeah,
somebody
what are you
actually
gonna do
broke
with
into your
that?
house, and yeah, exactly. What are you going to do with it? It's not like it's something you can just
Throw away.
sell off on the sly. I mean,
I don't know about you. I was like a little kid at Christmas time. The next morning I woke up and I'm like, I want to go look at that thing again. 'Cause the first one now I've seen a bunch of them, but even with all the Olympic medalists I knew prior to then, the first one I ever saw was the one they put around my neck.
have you been to the Olympic Museum, Lausanne, and seen all of the historical medals?
No, I
That
haven't.
is so cool. Yeah, they're all so different, and I really like the old ones, the ones from the early parts of the 1900s.
Yes.
And they're those tiny little ones that are just sort of
Like
solid
coins.
gold or things like that.
Okay.
Yeah, little medallions that you
72s
could
as
wear
far back
around your
as
neck.
I've seen,
And
yeah.
they're so cool.
But
Yeah.
they used to have all the ribbons on them as well, and they took them off. And I was really annoyed about that because that's part of it, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's part of the colour of it.
Yeah.
But anyway, the medals are
Yeah,
impressive.
that's my favourite part of the museum is the little display of the medals, the winter ones and the summer ones.
The winter ones are crazy. They're so
They are.
big, aren't they?
Yeah, they went to town on those.
I don't know why. Why are they allowed to do that?
I have no idea. But they are unusual.
Yeah.
Unusual. The summer ones tend to fall into a bit more of a format, don't they?
Yeah.
It's probably something in the rules. Right, we've got some user questions.
Okay.
Oh, we're going to do those now?
Yeah, we're gonna do
going to
those.
allow the
We'll
users
do
to
those.
actually get involved. Right? do you have one? Or
I
do
have
you
a
want me
couple.
to-
I have a couple here.
Go
We're
for-
going to do, and then we'll let you guys enjoy the rest of your days, or go back to bed, whichever you prefer. Hi Simon, says Don Lim. What did Coach Lee say to you when he tapped you on your chest during your gold medal match?
It was probably something along the lines of keeping. He was big on keeping your torso and your head still through the release. Okay, so rather than he used to talk about there being a triangle between your anchor and your two shoulders, and if you keep the triangle aligned to where it was aligned when you were aiming, if you kept that triangle through the release, you were less likely to adversely affect the alignment of the arrow as you were releasing the arrow. So it's basically aiming through. Like if you imagine you're aiming a gun and you keep aiming through the shot itself. So it's like he was talking about keeping centered, holding here, like keeping that position, and timing. That were the things he was saying. And he just kept saying them on a cycle. Just keep reminding, from end to end or shot to shot, keep this, rather than saying it at the beginning and then you forget. Because, like you said, there's all this distraction going on around you. It's just a way of keeping you focused on the process. And
if you're
on with the
repeating
job.
one thing, you're trying to keep that doubt out of your head as well, because you're focusing on
yeah,
something
that's right.
positive.
Yeah, you're focusing on what you're supposed to be doing, not other stuff. Yeah.
Ike Bade Ube, I think,
Hello.
asks, what's the disadvantage of using an open stance, Vic?
Well, I
That's
guess
if you agree. It's a test. It's a trick question.
well, there is a lot of archers that use the open stance. Probably advantages and disadvantages to both. The open stance, you have a little bit more preloaded torque in your body for stability, but you have to, with an open stance, you have to make sure to spin and get your shoulders aligned around and turn. Have to spin to get your shoulders aligned with the target. When you start with a parallel stance, your shoulders are naturally aligned with the target to begin with. So, camera viewers, you want your shoulders lined up with the target. When you start off with your open stance, you got to spin that around.
And I've talked to Brady, and he's told me that most of his draw actually comes from that spinning around, and rather than the pulling back of the arms. How do you think that works? Because I don't really get it.
Well, if that's Brady's, you'd have to ask him.
I don't think a lot of people do an open stance successfully.
No?
I think it's a difficult thing to do. They were very popular when I was young. Rick McKinney and Darryl and all of those guys had some sort of open stance, and that was the cool thing to do. If you were going to be a good archer, you had to have an open stance.
Well, it does look good.
But it's really difficult to do well, because it's very easy, as Vic said, to not rotate far enough and keep your shoulders in alignment with the shot you're making. I think it's a lot easier for most people, a lot safer
Stand.
to shoot a closed stance.
less-
And,
Less chance for mistake
I think
that
so.
way.
Yeah, mine's much more closed. Almost, I've even experimented going the other way and almost having my hips or my chest pointing away from the target.
You
a
bend
bit.
backwards towards it.
Well, if you've got that triangle your body's making anyway, in theory, if that side of the triangle that's your shoulders and your arm is pointing where it should, then your chest is actually going to point slightly away from the target. So it's a lot harder to get that position if you're open, if your feet are open. So I'd advise anyone who's shooting out there that they closed. It's much easier. You'd be much more consistent. People say it's better for clearance and stuff, but it's not as important. Wear a chest guard, get your shoulders in line.
Dominic asks, Simon, what's the secret to your beard?
Don't cut, don't shave. That's the trick.
Yeah, I mean, the first time I saw Simon, he had a long ponytail. Now it's just all migrated around.
It's gravity. It starts to migrate down. Yeah.
Yeah, but when we were talking before it started, I think compared to some of our peers, and for me, some of my peers in high school, and that I think that I look at the video of Simon and that I think we've aged fairly well compared to at least some of the friends I went to high school with. So.
Don't want to name any archers that haven't aged
quite. Look at Simon. Other than the beard and that, there's not a whole lot difference from that many years ago. So
definitely different from the ponytail though. That's
the ponytail is different.
I'm not sure that was a good look.
He was bulked up and working out a lot then too.
That's true. Yeah. I've let that side slide, but try and stay healthy. Yeah.
Vic, you've been competing for a long time and you've made US teams over a long time. So the question is from Tim, and he's asking, how have you managed that longevity in the sport? How have you maintained your enthusiasm more than anything, I think?
Well, I mean, I guess the biggest thing is I just love archery, and there's rarely a day that I don't want to go out and shoot. I mean, there's some times when I was practicing really hard, there's pouring down rain, that I'm like, well, this would be good training. There was a few of those days, but by and large, it's never something that I don't want to do. Some days I'm super thrilled about it, and some days I'm like, all right, hey, just we'll go do it again. And I think it just kind of gets down in your blood a little bit, and I really, really enjoy it. So I've been on the U.S. team since about 1990, with the exception of just a few years, of which since 1990 I've been on it every year except 3. 2 of those 3, all I had to do was shoot the last tournament more or less to get enough points to make it, and one year I missed. But I'm migrating a little lower on the thing. I'm working on the bottom half of it a lot more here the last couple of years. But archery's fun. I like it.
Fair enough. Last question, and then we'll let you have your day. Looking back on your archery careers, is there anything you'd change? Should we start with Vic?
I mean, you always make the best decisions with the information that you have at the time, or at least you try to. If I knew what I know now, I believe I would have easily made the '96 Olympic team. Just things I could have changed in my training and other things. I mean, there's, I'm sure if we could go back with what we know now, we'd be a lot better archers and shortcut a lot of mistakes. But you just make the best decisions with what you can.
And you can't say the ponytail.
My biggest regret is I was one of those people who, I think it's very common, would go to an international event. And you've got to remember, back when I was in the early part of the bulk of my career, we didn't get many overseas events. It's not like the World Cup circuit was there, and so we'd have a World Championships and a lead-up event, and you might get something else. But so you'd have a long spell of training in between events. Maybe 9 months where you're just training and then an event. And if it didn't go well, I'd already be thinking, because I was in love with archery at the time and obsessed by it. I'd be thinking about what I did wrong at the event that caused the lack of result. So even when I was traveling home, I was already planning what I was going to do when I got home to change things. And I kept thinking it was my technique that wasn't allowing me to achieve the result. There was a weakness in it, and so I was reinventing my technique every time I went home. So I had all these different techniques I used during my career. It wasn't just the same thing. So I was reinventing myself every time, and then going away and then not getting the result I wanted, go home and do it again and again. And I think I wasted a lot of years changing my technique, when really it was more about managing my technique. Yeah. I thought there was a technical fault. It wasn't a technical fault. It was, I just didn't shoot good shots at the event, and it was more about what was happening in here and how that linked into what I was doing with my shooting and my release at the time of under pressure. So I think I wasted a lot of years relearning things I didn't need to relearn.
Wow. Well, thank you.
Yeah. So don't keep changing your technique for change's sake. That's
Pick one and stick with it.
Yeah. Just learn how to shoot your good shots when they count.
Well, absolutely fascinating stuff, guys. Simon, Vic, thank you so much for joining us. I'm sure our viewers really enjoyed your thoughts.
pleasure.
Thank
for
you.
everybody.
Thank you.
And Chris, thank you very much
Thank
for
you.
your help here and for this wonderful shirt. I will be wearing this with pride all weekend. You can join myself and Vic for live coverage from the third stage of the Hyundai World Cup here in Salt Lake. We start tomorrow, 2 sessions. The first one's at 1, the second one is at 5:30, and we rinse and repeat and do the same thing on Sunday. Thanks very much for joining us here for our second live podcast.